There is a mind-boggling line in the Zohar. It says, "Adibur aya bagalut b'Mitzrayim." In Egypt, speech was in exile. A few days ago, we welcomed the month of Nisan, and as we just said, Passover is around the corner. Last week, I learned a beautiful teaching from Rabbi Shlomo Farhi that I actually want to share with you in preparation for the holiday. As we just said, the Zohar says, "Adibur aya bagalut b'Mitzrayim." In Egypt, speech was in exile. The Zohar, ever poetic and pointed, identifies the degradation of language, of voice, I'm aging. The font is getting every time a bit bigger, and I need this a bit closer. The degradation of language, of voice, of truth, of dialogue, as not just a symptom of exile, but as its essence. We often think of slavery in Egypt as a physical condition, a national affliction, but the Torah suggests that the roots of our enslavement lie in the breakdown of how we speak. And thus, redemption begins not just with the opening of the sea of reeds, but actually in how we open our mouths. It all began with a trust problem. When God promised Abraham that his descendants will inherit the land, Abraham responded, "Vayomer Adoni, b'ma yeda ki yarshena." How do I know that I will actually receive that land as my inheritance? And the Midrash and the Talmud suggest that that question, subtle as it seems, was the seed of exile, a hesitation, a crack in his trust on God, and in the eventual outcome of being in that land, as opposed to being in exile. Later, it is actually Joseph who brings את דיבתם הרעה, את defaming report about his brothers to their father. According to the Midrash, this evil speech, this Lashon Hara, plants the seeds for jealousy and hatred that will propel Joseph into Egypt. And with him, all of us, all the people of Israel. Speech drives the story. Speech divides. And in the hands of Pharaoh, it becomes a weapon of control. לו פן ירבו ויהיה כי תקראנה מלחמה בנוסף גם הוא על שונאינו נלחם בנו ולה מן הארץ. I'll translate in a second. Let us deal wisely with them so that they might not increase. Otherwise, in the event of war, they may join our enemies in fighting against us and rise from the ground. Have you heard the accusation about Jews having dual loyalty? That's the first time. That's the first time that Jews are accused of possible dual loyalty. It did not start with the Dreyfus case. Ava nit hakma. Let us deal wisely with them, says Pharaoh. And Rashi, the medieval commentator, explains that Pharaoh speaks deceptively, painting the Israelites as a threat. Not only did the Egyptians act against the Israelites, the verse later on will say, as we also say in the Agadah, "Vayireu otanu." They made us appear evil. Pharaoh reframes reality through propaganda, language that obscures rather than reveals. And when redemption comes, it comes not through a golden voice, but through a broken one. Moshe, the Redeemer, stutters. He says, "Lo ish dvarim anochi, ki kaved phi ukaved lashon anochi." I am not a man of words, for I am slow of speech, and my tongue is heavy, explains Moshe. The Zohar teaches that Moshe's impaired speech was not a deficiency, but a mirror of his generation. If speech is in exile, then the one who redeems, says the Zohar, must carry its wound. God's response to Moshe, saying, "Why me? Like, I have a speech impairment. I cannot be your spokesperson." God says to Moshe, "Anochi eye im picha." I will be within or with your mouth. Establishing that true leadership doesn't begin with perfect articulation. It begins with presence, intention, and divine partnership. It's not only the words we say, but the silence we keep. On the night of the Exodus, the night that the Israelites are leaving Egypt, the Torah says, not a dog shall sharpen its tongue against any of the children of Israel, meaning the dogs did not bark. Animals, they did not make any noise, so they could escape in silence. The Midrash, the exegetic literature, explains that because of their silence, the dogs were rewarded. And the Talmud adds an additional layer to that and says that when the angel of death enters a city, the dogs cry. And when Elijah the prophet enters, and Elijah symbolizes redemption, the dogs sing. On that night, the dogs did neither. They held their tongues. In the confusion of death and redemption, they waited to teach us that sometimes redemption sounds like restraint. Our sages were clear. Egypt was the exile of speech. Pesach, the festival of our freedom, is literally pe, means mouth, sach, which means conversation. Pe, sach, a conversational mouth. And at the Seder table, we actually reclaim lesocheach, is to converse. For all those that are kind of, what are you talking about? And it's not me, the tradition teaches us. Well, it is me too. But I came way late to the game. And at the Seder table, we actually reclaim that voice. As we say, כל המרבה לספר, הרי זה משובח. As all those that actually tend to increase in the telling of the story is the best case scenario. It's the best thing you can do in the night of Passover, and meshubach means praiseworthy. The repair of speech, it's not just by means of avoiding gossip. It's using words, teaches the Mishnah in Psachim, to connect, to recall, to remember, to bless, to dream, and to build forward. There is a moral urgency here. Our society is constantly speaking about speech. The freedom of speech is one of the main topics that we are dealing with. It's an important one. We also need to focus on how we speak. We need to do both. We need to advocate for the freedom to speak and for how our society is speaking. The moral urgency is all of them together. Lashon hara, evil speech, is not just petty or impolite. It is, in the words of the Hafetz Chaim, a murder of character. It drives wedges between siblings, tears down leaders, distorts perceptions, and can even, like Joseph report, alter the course of history. But speech can also be redemptive. In every generation, we are called to use our voices to resist propaganda, to speak truth, to listen generously, and to restore dignity through dialogue. We are living in times where speech is once again embattled, where rumor and accusation travel faster than nuance, where we often confuse saying what we feel with speaking from a place of responsibility. The exile of a speech is not behind us. It's not something we left 3,000 years ago. And neither is its redemption. The dogs were silent when they didn't know whether it was a night of death or of liberation. That too is a model. When we are unsure about what's true, about what helps, it is better to wait than to wound. And when we are ready to speak, let it be with kavanah, with intention. Let our words be offerings. Let our disagreements be honest but kind. Let our critiques aim toward healing. Let our silence be strategic. And above all, let us not forget that in every generation, we retell the story not just to remember what was, but to reclaim the power of what can be. On this journey from Mitzrayim, from Egypt to Mount Sinai, from exile to covenant, we hope to be guided by the courage to speak wisely and the wisdom to listen. We are the receivers, the inheritors of a fragile and powerful gift, language. In every generation, we are asked not only to speak, but to elevate speech, to take what has been distorted and make it whole. This is the work of liberation. It doesn't end with crossing the sea. It begins every time we choose clarity over confusion, compassion over condemnation, and truth over spectacle. This year, as Pesach approaches, let's ask ourselves, what stories are we telling about our past, about each other, and about what's possible? Are we adding to the noise or helping to clarify the voice of liberation? Our country, our people, our communities, our families certainly need that kind of clarity, that kind of speech. And as the Agadah reminds us, last year we were slaves. This year, may we be free. Shabbat Shalom.